The Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence. Many people in the United States of America, well, if they had learned about the Declaration of Independence in their geography class or their civics class, a lot of us have actually forgotten what was all involved in the sacrifices made and by those who engaged themselves to sign that Declaration of Independence for their freedom and ours today. So I would like to give the audience a quick infusion of knowledge of just what was involved in signing the Declaration of Independence. Now, they had a great price to pay, and some of you might be wondering from what's already been said, well, what type of sacrifice was actually made by those who put their signature to that document? Well, 5 of those signers were captured as traitors by the British and were tortured to death. 12 had their homes ransacked and burned. 2 lost their sons in the Revolutionary Army. Another had 2 sons captured. 9 of the 56 fought and died from wounds or the hardship of the Revolutionary War. Now, what kind of men were they? 24 of them were lawyers, 11 were merchants, 9 were farmers and large plantation owners, men of means and well-educated. But they signed the Declaration of Independence knowing full well that the penalty would be death if they were captured. Now, Carter Braxton of Virginia, he was a wealthy planter, and he saw his ship swept away from the seas by the British Navy. Also, he sold his home and properties to pay his debts and died in rags. Now, Thomas McKeon was so hounded by the British that he was forced to move his family almost constantly. He served in Congress without pay, and his family was kept in hiding. His possessions were taken from him. Poverty was his reward. Vandals, soldiers, are both looted many of their homes. Francis Lewis had his home and properties destroyed. The enemy jailed his wife, and she died within a few months. John Hart was driven from his wife's bedside as she was dying. Their 13 children fled for their lives. His fields and gristmill were laid waste. For more than a year, he lived in forests and he lived in caves, returning home after the war to find his wife dead and his children had vanished. He died from exhaustion and a broken heart. Such were the stories and sacrifices of the American Revolution. These were not wild-eyed, rabble-rousing ruffians. They were soft-spoken men of means and education. They had security, but they valued liberty more. Standing tall, straight, and unwavering, they pledged for the support of this declaration with a firm reliance on the protection of the divine providence. We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. They gave us an independent America. And of course, some folks would say, well, if they gave us an independent America, let us keep that independent America. But you know, I want to ask you a few questions. And this whole discourse here is just a few minutes. It's not going to be very long. But I thought it was important to share the Declaration of Independence and the history of what happened to some of those who signed and the great sacrifice they made for our freedom today. But let me ask you a few questions. Now, do you think that for one given moment that these men of financial means would have ever considered to lay their life and limbs on the line and run the risk of losing their wives and children and family possessions and businesses for our freedom today if they could have known aforetime what America would become today and known it to be the godless gutter grime of demon dirt that it is? Do you think they would have sacrificed their own peace and safety for a land that has become the sinful soils of Sodom and godless gutter grime of Gomorrah? Would they have sacrificed for polluted, perverted politicians in Washington who protect the rich from paying more taxes than the poor and middle class? Would they have sacrificed their lives for a future military that Washington sanctions to engage in vile, violent acts of reprobate relationships among themselves with their filthy, flirtatious acts of Sodom sex among the openly welcome crowd of gay jays enlisted? Would they have sacrificed for Washington's rot of politicians that take your tax money to finance works of infernal images they call art? geared against God, demonically debasing His holiness, as they finance with your tax money perverted so-called artifices that paint images of baneful, blistering blasphemy against God and the crucifixion? Would they have lived in caves away from their families and lose their fortunes and family for a crew of politicians in Washington that keep this nation and its people divided and drowning in poverty because of a president in 1913 who gave all the inhabitants of this land and their wealth over to the Federal Reserve Bank privately owned cartel? No, my friend, had they been able to see the final future of this nation as it is today in 2011, they never would have sacrificed all they had to help bring about what we have today as to what we call the USA.